One of the things I enjoy most about doing this is getting to interview some of the most amazing female tech leaders who are shifting paradigms and trailblazing a more even gender balance at leadership level across the tech sector. Josie Smith is a lifelong technologist, Star Trek enthusiast, and chief architect at telecoms giant BT. We break down what is meant by architecture in the context of a corporate organization like BT, and we also talk about more broader topics like female participation in the tech sector, the importance of a good mentor and how that has benefited Josie over the years, and much, much more. It's a fantastic interview. I really enjoyed this one. It's Josie Smith. Josie, thank you so much for coming on. I've been really excited to talk to you. But can you just give us a really quick overview, summary, introduction to yourself for the listeners who may not know who you are?
Thank you, and thank you for having me on here. It's a real privilege to do these things, and it's also very fun. So thank you for having me. My name's Josie Smith, and I'm the Chief Architect for our digital function in BT. I have been in the role for a year, but I've been at BT for about 5. And I've worked in IT and in the tech sector for, I don't know how many years, actually. I might not even say that. If you want to, you can search me up on LinkedIn. It's super amazing to be in digital at this point in time in BT's transformation.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to unpacking that. But I want to start with this question. Let's go right back to the beginning, okay? What was your favorite subject in school, Josie?
Oh, that is so hard because you're going to make me choose between art and computing. And I'm not sure I can actually make a decision between the two of those. And diverse, you might think, actually, as subjects for somebody that does the job that I do. But I think creativity in tech it goes very well in some sense. But I loved both. And actually, in my life today, I have to have events as well as the tech side. So I'm going to break the rules. I like doing that as well a little bit and say there's two, art and computing.
Creativity is something that you can't automate, isn't it? And I think it's becoming more and more of a commodity to be creative and an outside-of-the-box thinker. So what was your first job, Josie?
I think it was a checkout chick at Asda, actually, when I was, I guess, around 16 years of age.
And you learn about hard work as well, didn't you? And you learn that sort of nothing comes for free, and you've got to, exchanging your time for a salary or a wage is a learning curve for all of us, isn't it?
Definitely, and I think it's really good at that sort of age to have the opportunity to go and do anything like that. It's just a massive grounding in your career, isn't it?
I concur. So you obviously did a few services roles, customer service and stuff like that. When did you first have the thought, IT is where I want to go?
I'm going to tell you a little story about how mums are great. I mean, being one, obviously, I totally agree with that statement. And mums usually know best. And that is absolutely the fundamental of this story, whereby, art and computing, which way do I go? I think my early career, and again, the best advice I try to give people and my own children the same, is do what you enjoy and what you are best at. So when you get to GCSEs and you're doing the exams or any kind of exams or tests that you're doing, you'll know where your natural preferences lie. And my passion was in art, and I really enjoyed computing. I just enjoyed the logic of it. And I think at the time I'd started watching Star Trek. I'd started kind of getting inspired by, the types of things that you can do with tech and how it can change the way that you live. And actually, I was really torn. And it was my mum that really helped me make my mind up and helped to kind of walk me through that maybe computing was something that I could build a career on, and do art if you want to later on in life. And it was probably the best advice that she gave me, actually. I think it's true. I did go on and do, when I finished and I got a job up here in Leeds, I did go and do photography and I do lots of art stuff, which I guess we'll come to at some point in the conversation. But I do have both in my life, and it's very important for me to do that. But it was the advice of, listen to your mum. Listen to your mothers.
Yeah, definitely. I think what she probably said there to you was to sort of never, ever forget your passion and always keep doing that. But obviously you need to sometimes be pragmatic and to concentrate on what is going to give you a living, I wanted to ask you about, on the theme of the early part of your career, you went in the IT direction. You had a very successful career working for some amazing organizations in project management, architecture.
Yeah.
And you've culminated in you being the chief architect at BT. What are the milestones in your career, the watershed moments that stick out for you and go, that really set me on this path?
A couple of things, I think, and some of it relating to the support that you get from others and the belief that you have from others. And very early on in my career, in the early 2000s, believing that coming out of university and you think you can change the world, and actually I think people should try and hold on to that, because I do think that sometimes you get into organizations and you get into situations where that kind of gets knocked out of you a bit, but actually people should just keep on to that. And it was very early on, and I felt that I could do that. And I developed the first real data warehouse implementation, but I hadn't got the experience of doing it, but I had the belief of a couple of people in the organization that helped put me there.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think you've got to have a little bit of that, a little bit of luck, a little bit of being in the right place at the right time.
Sure.
And I was then, and that was the early 2000s. And it was, when data warehousing, Ralph Kimball was the author that you read at that time. And I remember buying the book and pretty much implementing Ralph Kimball data warehousing. They gave me £1 million, which was a lot of money at that time. And I implemented this metering system. It was not small in terms of the amount of data that we're putting in there. We were reading meters in around sort of 4-ish million homes in the country. And they needed that to be a data-driven and insightful business in order to make the money, because the margins weren't great. And that was my big first sort of step into doing something fairly big. But there's been other times in my career where, from, again, a leadership perspective, when I was in Cable and Wallace, they used to run this great leadership program. I thought it would just be like normal ones where you go in and you watch somebody talk about something on a PowerPoint slide and you do some exercises and hey presto, you're a leader. But actually this one really, it took you back down to grassroots. It took away everything that you thought that you knew, and until there was just you and what you were capable of doing.
Yeah.
It was a pivotal moment where after that sort of intense, it was 5 days over a period of kind of 6 months. You came out of that, and I remember one person saying, "Where's Josie gone?" Because I had actually built a lot of confidence over that time in just believing in myself. And a lot of it is believing in your ability over somebody else's. But it's a hard lesson to learn, because you're constantly looking at the next person and saying, well, in a competitive world, that person obviously is better than me, and not always recognizing what you're about and what you bring. And actually that's unique. And if you can understand and you can continue to learn what those are about yourself, then you will understand what your superpowers are.
So I wanted to ask you, on that leadership program, what was the sort of gender balance like there at that time, Josie?
It wasn't bad, actually. It wasn't bad in terms of there was only 3 women. I don't remember there only being kind of, a few of us, but I would say it could have been even up to about 40% women on it, which was pretty good, actually.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely.
In other courses, walk into a Gartner event and you feel like a loner. I think they did it quite well.
Yeah, there's definitely an issue there, isn't there? And it's a very complex subject. How are BT trying to tackle that conundrum and try to encourage females to fast track them into leadership roles?
Yeah. I mean, I sponsor Tech Women at BT, but I also help to support what we call our Gen Network, so our gender network. There's a few things that we're doing. I mean, the Tech Women is about how do we make sure people have got that confidence? What kind of training, methods, support, etc. do they need? And I think to date, we probably take about 450 women through that program a year, roughly. It's a huge privilege to sponsor it and actually to help encourage people to believe. You have to know yourself and know what your combination of skills are. When you start to understand that, it's that you can then have confidence in, and that helps to drive where best you can use those to succeed. But many women don't. They look at IT and they think you just have to be, a massive techie. Maybe in some roles you kind of do, but in quite a lot of roles where you don't have to. And there's quite a lot of roles that require different type of skills. So it's trying to open people's minds to the fact that there is something that they can do in the tech world. We also partner with Code First Girls. We do a significant amount with them, and through our graduate schemes. We've started to measure diversity and inclusion at the Exco. and set targets for our future, which I think, again, you have to measure the change that you want to see, and that's really important. And we're in the process at the moment of furthering some of our work with the Gender Network and the rapid action plan that we've got to put around ensuring that there is the opportunities and the coaching and training for women to reach the potential that they want to reach in this organisation and to be the best that they can be. So it's massive for me that we do this. And I do my own mentoring as well with people and try to support people all the time. It's so important. And I feel that somebody at my level, it's my role as much as being the chief architect to ensure that people can see what they can achieve, and putting myself out there and doing things like this to just get that message. Because if I can get through to either, just one person, then I've done my job as helping to kind of be the change that people can actually see.
I've heard you talk about this in terms of the three sort of key concepts of aptitude, attitude, and ambition. So yes. Can you elaborate on that, and also, in your experience, the importance and the value of a good mentor?
I accumulated my kind of like thoughts into what I call the 3 A's. And it's, I suppose, what I've lived by in terms of my career and why I think I've been successful in what I've done, in everything that I've done, right? And I don't mean getting to the level I've got to. I mean, I've taken this literally into every role, whether that was a business analyst or a project manager. Success for me is not necessarily getting to a level, it's achieving an outcome. And I've called it my 3 A's of aptitude, attitude, and ambition. Aptitude is, to my point earlier, you have to lean into your strengths, you have to understand them, you have to cultivate them. And once you realise that, you understand where you fit in this world or in this organisation and what you bring to that team or squad or what have you, that nobody else can. And that gives you, I think, well, it certainly did for me anyway, and does every day really, help me understand where I get my confidence from. So that kind of really, it gives you that confidence and self-motivation. Then you've got the attitude. Attitude to me is so important. I look at this when I'm hiring people, when I'm talking to people. Fundamental is attitude. If you've got the right attitude, I think that it counts for a lot. Demonstrating you're willing and you're open to take on new roles and responsibilities, positivity, the desire for that kind of personal growth. And I just think that as women, sometimes we can be quite risk adverse when it comes to new roles because we find them daunting because we don't necessarily think we can do that. And I think for me, the best way to shake that is to combine those kind of aptitude aspects with your attitude. And then again, I think that you start to build on your own confidence that you can do that role. And then the third for me is ambition. We all want to be the best that we can be, or we all strive to be, I think, in our different ways. And some people that is getting to a senior level in an organisation. For others, it's about the size of the problem or the challenge that they're there to solve and the role that they play within it, and for others it can be something completely different. But whatever it is that you do it with that ambition, really. And I think that I want to try and instill that in women, because I think you get stuck in a perception. I used to have a perception that being at this level meant you used to have to work every hour of the day. I work hard, but I still have my own life at the same time, and for a long time that sort of put me off wanting to be at this level. Mentoring isn't just something as a point in time either, Gareth. When you're in any job, really, and I felt I've needed it more the more I've taken on, the more accountability I've taken on. But I do have different people in what I would call my support circle. I would take mentoring from any of them at any point, and maybe I'll use them for different things. I would take advice from my husband, who he's very different to me, he's very opposite to me, but he gives me a different perspective, as well as having professional relationships that I call on, and people that I speak to regularly as well in some cases, just to help me. And actually, I used to think that all of these people who were like really good and professional and high up and walked along as if they, just confidence oozing out of them, brilliant speakers and all this kind of thing. And I used to think, well, I'm not like that. I'm not like that. And then you sort of realize that these people are not perfection at all. They are probably just inside sometimes as scared as you are for things that you've been doing. They've got a little bit more practice, but most of the time they've also actually got a good support mechanism around them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel scared sometimes. I feel anxious. I feel like I don't know the next turn. And I have that mechanism around me that helps me to get through that and see the way through, and, that help me see different ways, just the same as what I had when I was a business analyst or a project manager or any of the other roles that I've done. I didn't quite need it when I was in Asda, mind, but, but now I am.
No, absolutely. No, I think that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Josie. I think what makes you a good leader, and I mean that in terms not just you, I'm on about in general, is not so much the job title you hold and the responsibilities that you're lucky enough to hold. It's more about, I used to like to call them battle scars. You know what I mean? It's the hardships that you got through, and the situations you've overcome to get to the next point. So I wanted to use this, Josie, as a segue into your current position at BT. So for people who are not familiar with enterprise architecture, business architecture, can you basically just break down your role and what the challenges of your role are right now?
I get asked this quite a lot, from friends and family, in terms of what is it that you actually do. And I try to explain it in an analogy which is either a house building or a city building analogy.
Sure.
You're there as an architect to help someone's dream come true. They've got an outcome, whether that's the city that works well and has the right infrastructure, etc., or whether that's somebody's dream house. You have to take that vision and break it down into a construct that is going to be able to be delivered, bringing in the expert, the plumbers, the electrician, the highway people, whatever it might be, and actually creating a picture or a sense of that vision and bringing that vision into reality. It's just that my landscape isn't a city or a physical house with bricks and mortar. Mine is a technical landscape, and it's business outcomes that I drive, customer experiences, colleague experiences, right? Because it's not just about the customer, it's about the tools and things that we use every day just to do our job, to serve those customers or to do the job we do. And it's my job to set the vision of how brilliant and digital first and automated, and you're going to be able to use chatbots to book your holiday or whatever the visions are that is going to effectively deliver. How do we become more productive as workers all the day? How do we help our customers become more productive? How do we make their billing experiences, their conversations more frequent with us, and actually conversations that are helpful to them, that help them in their lives or help their customers. There's tech involved, right? There's clever stuff. There's all the stuff that's happening out there in Silicon Valley. There's making sure that we push in AI and data first thinking into everything we do. And that's my role, is to have that and hold that architecture view, so that as we start building, we know what we're building, and we don't build doors that open onto walls or, the equivalent of that in the tech world.
Wow, okay.
My challenge today, it's a big job. Yes, it's a big job. And it depends, obviously, when you're an enterprise architect, the enterprise is defined by whatever the scope is that you're doing. So you could be an enterprise architect and you'd sort of be doing the same thing as me if you were, dealing with customer front end systems or my favorite billing systems, for example. You have to do the equivalent, but your enterprise is that big and it's that scoped. Whereas my enterprise is BT and BT systems, so it's significantly, 2,465 systems. We've got heritage in there that is, we call it heritage. It's I probably should say legacy, really. It's a history of systems that's older than me in some cases.
It's built on top of each other over the years, I suppose, yeah?
Yes, kind of built on top. Sometimes we've tried to build a thing that brings them together, and then we've gone, but then we need something else. And so we've got all sort of technical flavors under the sun. And yet we've got a business vision, which is simplicity. It's the digitization of all of those journeys, fantastic experiences for our customers, well-informed conversations with our customers. So data becomes, really important. And what I know about you, Gareth, as a customer, if you are a customer of ours, how I can be proactive in the conversations, and I fix something for you before you actually knew it's even a problem for you, that sort of thing. It involves a coordination, and the coordination of the scale of what I'm trying to do is significant. And I think the challenge in BT is in other organisations, you've maybe got a smaller landscape, you've still got legacy. I think everyone lives with some kind of sense of tech debt wherever they are. But I think the difference in BT is the length of time and the amount of complexity that we've built up compared to that now we've got to untangle that or create new for a simplified business. And we have been a complex business, complex products, processes, it's significant. And as an architect, I'm trying to not just deliver the tech aspect of it, but an outcome for me consists of simplification of our products, our processes, our people aspect, and then the tech. And so we're trying to, in effect, create a simplified business that is automated, it's well established with a good data set behind it and insight and data and AI at the heart of that. We are 2 years into the implementation of that. We've a new leader. We've gone through an org change in the midst of that, and I've been a year into digital as a result. Digital is helping me accelerate my vision now, which is fantastic. And my challenge is turning this oil tanker into something simplified. Hopefully that answers your question. I mean, I could talk about it for hours, to be honest.
No, I think you answered the question brilliantly. I mean, a lot of people don't realize about BT. I think because BT came out of the post office, if you go back far enough, didn't it? And it was a nationalized organization, and it's had to change and adapt in terms of its brand and its narrative, but also in terms of the way it operates as an organization. So it's been through an enormous amount of evolution, even in the short time you've been there, isn't it?
Yes. We're getting on quite well. You know, since Harmeen arrived, the other thing that we've done is start to think about the telco, and there's a digitization of the telco aspect of our product set. But also we know that that's still going to be the core part of our business, but we need to branch into more digital products. And so we are doing a lot of work there now. We have an incubation unit, etc. We've made some investments. That's exciting. It's exciting to think about getting into new stuff. In order to serve those, we've been implementing marketplaces. So we're now doing platform thinking and bringing ourselves and our architecture up to date with that kind of thinking in the digital space. So, you know, we're doing drones, healthcare. There's some exciting stuff happening at the moment in our digital unit. It's a fantastic place to be. But also we're thinking about, well, if you are starting to become more of a tech co, then, well, how do we change ourselves? How do we change our organisation, the people within it that have been here for a long time, some of them, and how do you set them on a new path? Because it's not just about learning AWS or something. It is about thinking quite differently about how we solve problems using tech. And there's a reinvention there. And I've had to go through that as well, actually, over the last year in terms of thinking about how do I architect differently? Back to the analogy of the house, there's new products that have come on, there's new ways of building, there's new methods. I think in any job you have to kind of reinvent yourself. So it's been a period of that as well. And as a result, I've also taken on, in a digital platform organisation, you have architecture, but you have this concept of technical leadership. So in my role, as well as doing the architecture side of things, Gareth, I do actually own some core services. So I do actually own all of the integration and engineering, all of our cloud platforms and all of our engineering tooling, so that I'm going to mold myself and my team into not just a standard architecture team, but a technical leadership team in a digital business sense, because that's what I think that we need to reinvent ourselves to become.
So of all the things that BT are working on right now in terms of, you know, R&D or stuff in the pipeline, or maybe something a bit more imminent than pipeline, what are you most excited or proud of?
I think the incubation stuff's pretty cool, actually, and I'm looking forward to doing more work with them and some of the stuff they're doing around healthcare and some of the other things that they're looking at the minute. But actually, I think that the fundamental shift for us will be driving AI first into our thinking. At the moment, AI is sort of thought of as an after. How can we now apply some artificial intelligence to this? Actually, there's a fundamental way of thinking that we're starting to drive now in our organisation, which is, how do I start with thinking AI first? What does that mean?
Sure.
How do I architect differently? How would I design differently, thinking about that? You know, we're doing AI ops, zero ops, in the sense of we're going to have a full automated chain right the way through CI/CD pipeline, all the way through into our operations, self-healing. That's super exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's super exciting.
I've not heard zero ops before. I like that one. Zero ops.
Well, you know, what do you want your engineers who have got so much knowledge doing. You don't want them doing mundane. We want predictive stuff, and we want them working on the real complex things that we either need to fix or operate. There's so much more that they can give. So getting to a point where you are run through AI and you have zero ops means that you'll be more efficient, we'll be more joined up, we'll be slicker as an organisation, and we'll have engineers working on business value first rather than the other things they do today. They don't get to code as quickly as we'd like because we put too much stuff in the way, or we're working on mundane ops things that could be self-healed.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. But look, Josie, I could talk to you about this all day, and you clearly could talk about it all day as well. It's great to see someone so passionate about what they do. So I commend you for that. But I wanted to take the conversation back to you. So first of all, I wanted to ask you, besides watching Star Trek, as we've already established, tell us a little bit about Josie outside of work.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you do... For a lot of people, work becomes all-encompassing, but actually I find for my own mental health that I have to have other things.
Yeah.
I'm always busy, actually. I would sort of split that into a few areas of, for my mental health, I do run. I ran London Marathon, so I've kind of ticked a thing off my bucket list in terms of being able to get round a distance like that, but in something.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
It was quite a challenge. Well, I've signed up for another one, Gareth. I'm doing the Rob Burrows Marathon in Leeds next May, I think.
Oh, yes. So for the listeners who are unaware, it's a motor neurons disease charity. Rob Burrow, who used to play for Leeds rugby league team. So that's an amazing cause.
These runners, yeah. And I like to reach out. I like to do reach out, as we've talked about, in terms of understanding, getting an understanding of tech and STEM. So I do help with Otley Science Festival as well. On the art side of it, I've done many things, but I do crochet, as you can see from my baby Yoda sat behind me. That sort of it helps me. It helps me with my art. And how I continue to kind of do that and satisfy that side of me.
I think it's really important to have things, especially in a role like yours, which could easily absorb you into this bubble of pressure and, anxiety. So I think, you've got to keep your brain active. I mean, when you're doing other things like that, it keeps you sane.
Yeah, it keeps you balanced.
Straight and narrow.
Yeah,
so.
It puts things into perspective. Yeah. You've got something else so you can switch off the electronics. And so I think it is good to have a hobby. Otherwise, it's too easy for roles to get all consuming.
So a couple of questions, taking it back to your work life then. What productivity advice would you give?
I do write lists a lot. I mean, I don't always get through the lists, but I write lists just because I think sometimes you can't keep these things in your head, and that's what makes you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and not being able to sleep because you're thinking about all the things that you've got to do. And so I think making sure that you've segregated your work and you really understand as much as you can, prioritize on what's important, because one of the things that I try and do is separate my list into, well, this is urgent, but this is important, and working out that I need to spend my time equally on the urgent, but also the important, because otherwise the important doesn't get done. Not getting consumed by email, which is hard. That's another tip. On Outlook, you can do a cleanup, and that reduces, when there's lots of conversation going on, it reduces your emails there. So there's a cleanup facility, which is excellent. I mean, diary management is also key. Thinking about maybe if you've got a wide variety job like me, where you're having to focus on one day it's data architecture and talking about Google, and the next day, you're into some kind of GitHub discussion on tooling or something to do with Slack. I mean,
sure.
I try to split my week up, not context switching as much as I can help it.
Yeah, that's a big problem for me.
I think it is, and actually trying to order your day is as important as the list. And then the last thing I would say is make sure that you get some away from desk time. I have an hour, or as much as I can, I have an hour every day. I will get out either the office or my home office. Sure. And I think that's really important.
When I'm working from home, I'll make sure I go for a walk around the park on my lunch break, just to get that. I think that process of just walking forward with sunlight coming down on you, it does something to your brain. So let's finish on this one then, Josie. Looking back now on your career, obviously you've got a long way to go, but, what advice would you give to your 21-year-old self?
Oh, that's a hard question. I think I would have probably given myself the advice to have found my superhero qualities, and the advice I gave earlier about not just looking at someone and saying I'm not as good as them, because
Sure.
bring something different, and what you bring that's different is your uniqueness, and your uniqueness is the thing that is special, and everybody has it, just not everybody's found it.
Yeah,
and I think
sure.
I'd have loved to have, I kind of knew what they were, but I didn't rate them as high. I didn't rate my ability to connect with people as something that actually I could consider a superpower, but actually there's lots of people that can't do that. And I didn't realize that then. I just thought, well, I can do it, so everybody can do it, can't they?
Yeah, sure. So many people do that we basically compare ourselves to the best of everyone that you kind of aspire to be, you know what I mean? Whereas what makes them good at what they do is the imperfections, and as we talked about earlier, the journey that they've been on. So
and how many people are looking at you? So, you know, even today, Gareth, how many people are looking at you and going, I wish I was like him? But you maybe don't realise that yourself.
I'm not sure about that, but
yeah, I'm pretty sure they do. Like, but you don't realise that because you're looking at somebody else and saying, I'm not as good.
Yeah, for sure. It's a bit different to what you're talking about, but I know for a fact from people who I know that imposter syndrome is something that people suffer terribly with. Any successful person who I know has had an enormous amount of hardship in their background, whether it's work related or whatever, but it's nonetheless, there is lots of hardship there, and that tends to be why they are so successful, because they've got through that. But look, that's brilliant advice, Josie. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a thoroughly enjoyable conversation, and it's been full of value, and I'm sure the listeners will be really appreciative. So thank you so much, Josie, and thank you for coming on the Tech Leaders Podcast. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for downloading this episode. We really love doing this show and are absolutely humbled by all of the incredible people who download and listen, plus the incredible guests who take the time to come on and share their secrets and experiences with our listeners. Please can I ask that you take a couple of seconds to subscribe or follow the show. This small action means a lot to us and helps us greatly. Thank you. As you quite possibly have heard me mentioning in the past, we record the mass majority of our episodes at an amazing studio facility here in Cardiff at Tramshed Tech. Tramshed Tech is a collaborative community of entrepreneurs and scaling businesses geared towards supporting growth in tech, digital and creative industries across an ever-increasing collection of locations and partner locations, UK-wide and internationally. It really is the perfect place for your business to start up, scale up, accelerate or innovate. Head over to tramshedtech.co.uk or just search Tramshed Tech on your favourite social media platform.